And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo, episode 86. We're going to preview the World Series. It's finally here. In order to do so, Mo and I are joined by a special guest. You can find him at Dodgers Digest. He's on Twitter at Dustin Nosler, Nosler. Dustin, how we doing, man?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for joining us tonight. As the usual listeners know, we can't let Mo have all the fun, so we had to mix it up a little bit this evening. We'll talk Dodgers for a little bit here, and it kills me as a Giants fan, but this is baseball in my life these days. Dustin, when you're kind of watching this postseason run, what's your overall thoughts of the Dodgers? Because I know talking to many others, we've had other Dodgers people on throughout the season, and there was a lot of hiccups throughout the season, but they seem to maybe fine-tuning it here in the postseason. What have you thought so far?
It's been really weird. I mean, at times they look like world beaters. They look like one of the best teams in baseball. And at other times they look like they have no business being in the playoffs, let alone playing for the World Series. It's been kind of the MO of the season where they're just kind of up and down, inconsistent. They haven't had that, sustained run that they've had in years past. So, it's really unbelievable that they've made it this far. Because back in May, I think a lot of folks were really, really down on them.
Yeah, I mean, not that people said they were dead in May, but there was a chance that it really could go south, especially with the Seager injury, and then we knew they were going to kind of come back. At least most smart baseball fans. But in terms of the playoffs, let's talk about it's tough to have disappointments when you're in the World Series and you beat the Brewers and. In a 7-game series with that bullpen, but just give us a couple surprises, disappointments that you've seen in the playoffs thus far.
Well, I would have said Cody Bellinger has been a little bit of a disappointment after a bad finish to last year's postseason when he got basically owned by the Astros. But then he came through a couple of times big in the NLCS, so that he kind of turned his fortunes around. Chris Taylor being good in the NLCS again was a little bit surprising, even though he was the co-MVP last year. He didn't have the same kind of year in 2018 that he did in 2017, but he was still a solid player. So I guess that was a little surprising. And a little surprising on the negative side would be probably Clayton Kershaw's Game 1 performance, where he only went 3 innings. And you can throw in both Hyun-Jin Ryu's starts in that series as well.
One other thing when you're talking surprises, maybe, what's your thoughts on could be good, could be bad, just Yasiel Puig in general in the postseason?
I mean, there are times, and especially early in his postseason career, all-time games played leader for the Dodgers, by the way, if you didn't know that. I didn't realize that. Yeah, somebody tweeted that the other day, and I had to do a triple take to make sure that was legit, but that's crazy. He had his struggles early on, especially against the Cardinals. Last year, he seemed a little more focused until the World Series. He kind of fell back a little bit. But this year, he was kind of falling back, and now he's kind of on the upswing, I'd say, especially with that big 3-run home run in Game 7.
Okay, so now when you're breaking down postseason pitching, you could get away with a 3-man rotation, the new bullpenning method of life, all kinds of fun things. When you look at the Dodgers, you have Kershaw, you have Buehler, you have Ryu, you have Rich Hill, Mr. D Mountain himself. You have guys like Urias out of the pen, who that performance in Game 7 after we found out his grandmother passed away earlier. There's a lot to like about this pitching. How do you see them breaking it down against a very tough Red Sox lineup?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the Red Sox have one of the best offenses in baseball, not dissimilar to what the Dodgers faced against the Astros last year. The only thing, and I haven't done my full preview on it yet, but the early research into it, the Red Sox seem to struggle a little bit against left-handed pitching, and that's a big strength of the Dodgers when you got Kershaw, Ryu, Rich Hill, Julio Urias, Caleb Ferguson in the bullpen, and even Alex Wood, a former All-Star, is now relegated to bullpen duty. I think that might be the biggest weakness for the Red Sox against the Dodgers pitching. But I mean, anytime you've got Mookie Betts and JD Martinez in the same lineup, along with guys like Xander Bogaerts and Steve Pearce, who's always been a lefty killer in his career. Ian Kinsler has been a consummate professional, and Rafael Devers was Devers or Devers?
Devers, yeah.
Devers. I thought so. He's got worlds of talent playing third base. The Reds and Jackie Bradley Jr., the ALCS MVP at that big grand slam. I mean, it just shows how deep this lineup is. And the same could kind of be said about the Dodgers, at least when they're all on, but they've been so inconsistent, even though they led the NL in home runs and runs scored. But, it just shows that the two of the deeper lineups in baseball made it to the World Series. And, you got Mookie Betts, who might very well be the best player in baseball, with or maybe slightly behind Mike Trout.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on with the whole lefty thing because, unfortunately, they keep putting Kinsler and Nunez in the lineup no matter what against lefties, and that's been a problem. Kinsler struck out a million times, and Nunez is Nunez. So it will be interesting to see what happens there, especially when they do go to LA. But it sounds like from what I just read that it looks like Kemp is going to be in as the DH. Does it seem like when they're in Boston, are they going to kind of go a Kemp, Max Muncy sort of platoon there with the DH?
I think it depends in game one how Kemp does against Chris Sale.
Yeah.
No small task by any means, but if there's any kind of postseason situation he was made for, it was to be a DH against left-handed pitching in the World Series. He kind of struggled to close his season, as a lot of us really thought after his hot start. But, he may be able to run into one at times, but if not, I mean, the Dodgers will have the option to go to Max Muncy, who, despite being a left-handed hitter, it had pretty good numbers against lefties through the entire season. It wouldn't surprise me if Kemp struggles mightily in game one, that Muncy gets the calls to DH in game two, or David Freese gets there and Muncy plays first base. One way or another, Muncy gets in there. It just really kind of depends how Kemp responds to the assignment in game one.
All right, when you see teams win postseason series, let alone World Series, there's always a handful of guys that kind of come out of nowhere, or there's some very significant moments that make or break a series. If you just have to kind of foreshadow, if you see the Dodgers winning the World Series, what are three key factors, three key players, however you want to break it down, that need to happen for the Dodgers to win the World Series?
I think Clayton Kershaw has to be more like he was in his second appearance in the NLCS, and say closer to what he did last year in game one of the World Series. Even with his diminished velocity and the slider and the fastball kind of converging in terms of velocity and movement, you gotta your best players have to perform. I mean, you can get those performances from the unsung heroes, the Chris Taylors, the Jock Petersons at times, but if you don't have your big guys performing, your Justin Turners, your Clayton Kershaws, your Manny Machados, if they're not performing, it's going to be really tough to win, because you can't really expect to have those players who aren't as well known or as, frankly good, because that's just, talent level. It's just going to be a little harder if they don't get big performances from their best guys. So they got to have good pitching from Kershaw, and just for the rest of the rotation as well. And the bullpen, which has been really good in October, needs to keep it going, and they have to hit. I mean, if they don't hit, it's not going to matter. The Red Sox have a lot of good pitchers. They've got big name guys, and they got some lesser known guys who have really stepped up in the postseason. And if the Dodgers don't put good wood on the ball, it's really not going to matter how well guys like Kershaw and Ryu and Buehler pitch.
Yeah, let me slide a quick question in before I ask you about the difference maker for the Dodgers if they are to win. I know, and it's only 28 innings or something on the road. Are you a bit surprised that they are starting Ryu on the road instead of just saving him for game 3 because he's got a 1.15 ERA at home this year? Or do you not believe in that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to kind of put a ton of stock into that small number of innings in the home road split, especially for him. He missed so much time this season with the groin injury. But we saw what happened in Milwaukee in the NLCS. I mean, he wasn't great. And whereas he started game 1 of the NLDS and shut down the Braves.
Yeah.
Different situations, obviously, but I thought they might go with Rich Hill in game 2, give him a shot there. And like you said, save Ryu for home, where he seems to perform better. So it's a little surprising, but not crazy, I'd say.
Hey, real quick. You mentioned how it's a very, very good offense in Boston, similar to Houston. Last year's World Series, it got a little wild, like way more offense than I think some people thought based on both pitching staffs we were seeing. Do you foresee this being a similar offensive series, or do you think some of these really elite pitchers, it kind of turns into the pitching duels?
You would think that with the guys Kershaw, David Price, Chris Sale, you've got all these enormous names of pitching in baseball, and you would think that they'd throw a couple of pitchers duels in there, and I could see that happening easily. I could also see slugfest for if it goes 7. I could see 4 of the 7 games being 6-5, 8-6, 10-9 games. It just really depends how the hitters react to these big name pitchers. And at the same time, you could see a couple of 2-1 games. I mean, it just seems like both teams are really built for any kind of scenario that comes their way.
So let's get to the biggest difference maker if the Dodgers are to win this series is who?
I'm gonna say, I know what I said about the big guys and everything. I'm gonna go with Manny Machado.
Yeah.
They brought him in to replace Seager because Seager is out with the injury. He's a top 15, 20 player in the game going into his free agent offseason. Not that he's going to boost his standing much more, but this would be the time for him to shine. He's very familiar with Boston after spending all those years in Baltimore. I don't know what that's going to mean for the series, but at least he has that familiarity. If the Dodgers do end up winning, it's going to be because Manny Machado has a really good series.
Yeah, he hates us, so he hates everything Red Sox.
I had heard something about that.
Speaking of Manny Machado, I know this is not on the outline, but I thought about it now. What was the reaction in Dodger world about Machado and Aguilar's ankle?
I thought it was Bush. I called it out on Twitter, and
thank you.
Yeah, I had like probably a 70-30 split of people who agreed and who didn't. The biggest argument was he didn't get his foot off the bag, he being Aguilar.
Right.
And it's just like,
that's irrelevant.
It's
he did
okay.
do it, but it's irrelevant.
Yes, I understand. It's okay. You're Dodger fans. I understand that. It's okay to say Manny Machado was wrong in that situation. He absolutely was wrong. He looked like a wide receiver trying to get his foot down in bounds to intentionally hit Aguilar's ankle. I'm just glad nothing serious came from it in terms of injuries.
Yeah, definitely. All right, here we are. What is your series prediction and who wins the MVP?
On my podcast, I said Dodgers in 7. We didn't do an MVP, but I told my partner off air that I really think the Red Sox are clearly the better team, and I just have taken so much crap this year from being against the Dodgers. I've been kind of cynical and kind of apathetic this season toward the team after last year. But so I'll stick with it, and they'll say Dodgers in 7 and Manny Machado's the MVP.
All right. Well, Dustin, we appreciate it. We're going to go do the Red Sox side of things. You can join us if you'd like, or if you got things to do, you feel free to run. But we appreciate you joining us, and everyone. You can find Dustin on Twitter at Dustin Nosler, Nosler, and at the Dodgers Digest. Thanks again, Dustin.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
You too. All right, Mo. It is your turn. I will interview you.
Yes.
And we will see how this goes for you. First off, we know we were both pulling for the Astros.
Well, not
bittersweet or – well, you got to stick to your picks.
Yeah, well, with the pick, but who am I rooting for? Okay.
Okay, fair enough. How surprised were you to see it happen? Like, I wouldn't say that easy is the right word, but that easy.
Obviously, before the series, I was surprised because I had Astros in 6. As a betting man, I would have bet the Astros. Once it. We talked about the first couple games, and once it got late into that series, I'd say probably game 3. After that game, I thought it was over. I literally said, if they win game 3, I think it's over because they just aren't healthy. I mean, Altuve could barely run the bases. He couldn't play the field anymore. Marwin hit the wall in game 1, I think, the Green Monster, and was kind of hurt, and he had to play second base. Obviously, Correa is not healthy. They were batting him 7th. And then Springer had a couple things going on. So really the only one that was healthy was Bregman, and they pitched around him the whole series. They really did. And when we got him out 6 times in a row, I was very surprised because he is human. But they literally, their game plan was you don't give him any pitches. You paint that bottom left corner of the strike zone, and if you miss, you miss, and no big deal. And it worked. I can't believe that it worked because that lineup is so potent, but they just weren't healthy. And I count my lucky stars they weren't healthy. I'm not saying the Red Sox wouldn't have won, even if they were healthy. But man, that was such a big factor in the series, and it's Red Sox fans are very, very lucky there. Okay, very, very lucky, because I think if they're all healthy, it's a different story. I'm not saying the Astros would have won the series, but it would have been a different story. It would not have been over in 5, in my opinion. It's
pretty crazy to see just how hurt Altuve was. He had the meniscus surgery like a day after it was over. Yeah. It's got a torn bone off of his sounds like what I have in my knee, but he's way more athletic than me, so he actually has surgery on it. That's the difference, because I had my meniscus floating around because the bone broke off from it. But yeah, I digress. But I know the pain I couldn't run and stuff for like 2 months. He pretty much did it and missed 10 days on the DL. Yeah. So it shows you the kind of stuff that he was in. But speaking of Altuve, I have to ask you, because I know what your answer was in the group DM we have, but that was a home run.
Yes, that I wanted to get to that next. Look, the fact that I know they did
went into the crowd. He went into the crowd.
Yes, so I'm like one of the rare Red Sox fans, I think, that agrees with that. I think the Astros got screwed. It could have changed. Obviously they won by 2, so it would have been a huge thing, because it would have been tied, right? And it might have changed the whole momentum of the game early in the game, right? Because then Porcello, maybe he's not there as late as he went. Not that he did go late. I completely agree. I think once you go into the stands, they can literally rip his glove off if they want to. I mean, that's the rule. You can do whatever you want. Now, I know they showed a picture of the other guy that was sort of beside him. His hand was over the yellow line. And I hadn't read the Fangraphs article. I forget who wrote it, but I guess it was he'd making the case that it was not a home run and it was fan interference. And then the camera they had, that security guard was like looking to see like what they were doing, but he blocked the camera. Mm-hmm. I guess we got to stop putting cameras on top of the foul pole or something. It's sort of like they finally did with the pylon in the NFL. So I completely agree with you. I think it was 100% a home run. I think they got it wrong. Having said that, Bubba, at the time, Joe West ran out there and called it out. So if you don't have that camera angle, you can't overturn that call in the field. So I said, I think I tweeted it right away. I go, it's either they're going to stick with the call on the field if they can't get a good replay about it. And they did not find a good replay that had it side to side, even though we all pretty much thought his glove was in the stands. Now, also, I do think he catches it if they just stand back like they did 2 games later when he made that catch in front of the wall, right? So, like, if they all sit back, he catches that ball, and that's just how athletic Mookie Betts is. It was going to be an insane catch.
No, the biggest thing is I think we're going to see all these stadiums start to have fence lines like Philadelphia, where you have like a foot or two between the field of play and where the seats begin, that it's like blocked off. So you have that wiggle room there. I see that coming in most of these stadiums pretty soon.
They don't want to give up those seats, though, you know?
It's money. Tough. I know. They can raise every seat $1. They'll be fine. But that, and just the part that bugged me the most is, it was Joe West of all freaking. The only person better would have been Angel Hernandez. But the fact that on the field you got to call that a home run and then reverse it. You can't go the other way around. Like, you can't call that. To me, you can't, because you weren't, like you said, conclusive evidence wasn't there. You got to give them the home run and then turn it the other way.
Yeah, I said that exact thing too. I said it's almost like touchdowns or turnovers in the NFL, because everything is reviewed for touchdowns and turnovers. So they just literally
let the play stand.
Exactly. Just let it play. Then we can fix it. That's the same call that needs to be made. Now, granted, and people were like, "Oh, we don't need outfield like umps anymore." Like, why not? Like, they're out there. You have enough umps. There's only 2 series going on, so it's only 2 cities. So, but you know what's funny about Joe West is he literally had statistically the greatest game umpired behind the plate, I think is what I saw. Like, literally was on point with the the strike zone that they put on TV and stuff that they actually grade them on, which is insane. I said it, I was like, he had a great game behind the plate, and I couldn't believe it.
That is impressive for Joe West.
Yes.
Let's take it to another thing that was impressive, and many thought would never happen. David Price got a win in the postseason. How was that?
He was awesome. He really was. I mean, it's especially off some rest and whatnot. And then he was up in Game 6, but he was great in that game. It really felt good for him. Again, I talked about it last week. The win stat we know doesn't matter anymore, obviously, but when it comes to David Price in the playoffs, it did. So they were 2-0 in his starts, by the way, Bubba. I don't know if you know that. So that's pretty good.
That's what they do.
Yeah, 6 innings, 9 Ks, 3 hits. I mean, he was just tremendous. Next year's closer, Matty Bonds, came in after that, and gave up a run, unfortunately, but he was good in the series too. But yeah, David Price getting that win is tremendous. Really, really good.
Next question I have, then we'll get to some actual World Series predictions from you for your Red Sox. And don't tell me this is because of Bobby Nightingale, but what the hell is Chris Sale doing with the belly button ring? Because Carabas confirmed this, so don't say it's Bobby.
The first thing that came up to me was, well, he's from Florida, so anything goes in Florida, in different parts of Florida.
Sorry, Yancey.
Sorry, Yancey. Sorry, a couple of our other guys. Just anything goes there. I mean, I know there's some good people there, but there's also some weirdos. I mean, you see some crazy stories in Florida. So that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe he lost a bet. I don't know. He went to Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast. So maybe he lost a bet there, partying too much. I don't know, but listen, I'm not going to ask questions. If he's going to win games, I don't care if he can put piercings anywhere he wants. Okay. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. So
okay. You were frozen for a second, but
okay. So all right. So Chris Sale, belly button ring, outstanding. But he's starting Game 1 versus Kershaw. Before we get into that,
yep.
Give us three key things for the Red Sox to win.
It's the number one key, obviously, is the starting pitching, because even though the bullpen was great, you need Eovaldi to do what he did. You need Price to get to 6. You need Sale to get to 6. I think they can still win if Sale isn't himself. I know there was a picture today in the Dan Shaughnessy tweeted it. His elbow was very, very red, so that there's a possibility he might have been injected with a shot or something, cortisone shot. I'm not sure what's going on there, but if Sale isn't himself, because obviously in that game versus the Astros, he was walking a ton of guys. He had no command, no control or anything. As long as Price and Eovaldi give you what they gave in the Astros series, you can still win it. And I think the next one, Bubba, is when they get to that bullpen, can Brazier, Barnes do what they did? They were nails. I mean, they were just really, really incredible. Brazier came out of nowhere. I mean, he was in Vegas on a bachelor party when they called him and gave him a tryout. I mean, that's just a heck of a story. And then, like I said, I think there's a sneaky chance that Matt Barnes is your closer next year. If Kimbrel decides to go home and they don't give him more than 4 years, like I said. And then the third thing is the top of the lineup, Betts, Benintendi, Martinez, need to hit. They were kind of quiet in that series. You obviously had JBJ. You had JBJ be the MVP, even though he batted like 200, but he came up with 3 clutch home runs. You got some hits from Devers. I hope he plays a ton. But what's sad too, Bubba, is JBJ. I think maybe Game 3 he might play. I don't know how they're going to figure that out, but he might play because it's Walker Buehler. But he's going to sit the rest of the Game 4 and 5 against lefties. He's just, people are all hung up on this. He was the ALCS MVP. We know what JBJ is. Okay, JD is going to be in there. Mookie's going to move to center. JD will go to right, and that's it. I mean, he already said that. I don't think they'll move Mookie to second unless there's something extreme late game where they need runs and they need more bats in there. And that's the only way I see that happening.
Do the Red Sox need to look at anybody in their front office for the fact that Eric Gagne found out Craig Kimbrell was screwing up and no one else watching film?
I don't know. I tweeted about it, and I was like, "Oh,
now he's facing the Dodgers.
Finally, we won that Gagne trade. It's taken however many years, but we finally won that Gagne trade." And the other thing too, Bubba, to watch out for, and I haven't read anything about it. Stephen Wright's eligible to come back on this roster, and they didn't give Erod any run. I mean, he has no faith in Erod, even though he's the only lefty in the bullpen. But it's not like he's a lefty specialist per se. So I think there could be a possibility, and I haven't seen anything about it, possibility that Stephen Wright's on that roster, which would be a huge, huge help to them.
Yeah, put some innings in there on that knuckler. That'd be big.
Yep.
When they don't have the DH, what are they doing?
Like I just said, yeah, I think there's a possibility. I think JBJ should sit all 3 games, but I do think there's a possibility that he plays game 3 just because it's Walker Buehler and it's their only righty. But he's 100% sitting game 4 and game 5, and JD will go to right. That's 100%.
All right. Well, let's do it then. Prediction MVP.
I've got Boston in 7, and I think Mookie Betts is your MVP. I think he's been so cold. Batted .217 last series with only 2 extra base hits, but he's made he's only struck out twice, so he's made contact, but he's due. Him and JD are due, but I think ultimately with him at leadoff, I think they're gonna get him moving a little bit. I think he's gonna end up winning the MVP. And like I said, Sox in 7. It's gonna be a really good series. MLB execs are probably very happy that it's Dodgers Red Sox. They are probably jumping for joy.
Yeah, they got everything they wanted, unfortunately.
I know. Trust me, I know. I was hurt by
I have no problem rooting for the Red Sox because I will be. But
yes,
yeah, the other side of the spectrum sucked.
My guy.
Give me Boston in 6.
Okay.
And I'm going to go a little off the wall because I like Mookie Betts a lot. I could see, Price or Sale if they have 2 good starts and maybe a third. But my guy's going to be Steve Pearce with all the lefties that the Dodgers have.
Ooh, yeah, I like that too. That's going to be very interesting to see what he does because Devers has been awesome. He made that one bad play, but other than that, at the plate, he looks comfortable. He took the ball the other way a couple times. He drew a walk once, so that's huge because he got he gets all the ice cream he wants when he walks, and Cora gives it to him, so it's great. Yeah, I'm excited. I think your prediction is good. I just think they're very even. Surprisingly, which I think the Dodgers bullpen has been was very good in the last series. Other than Maeda, and then Urias somehow was better after that first game. He looked very, very good, which is it's good for fantasy next year to see where he goes because he looked really, really good.
Filthy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be fun. It starts Tuesday night. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, well, maybe not. The series might be over. Red Sox might be getting the duck boats ready. So we'll see how that goes. But we'll be back next week. We'll cover the Victor Mesa signings with Miami. We'll cover somehow Brad Ausmus is the best test taker for the Angels. I can't figure that one out. And so much more. We've had a couple manager signings. Eduardo Escobar just got a 3-year extension with the D-backs. I think that's genius. There's a lot for us to talk about here coming up, but we wanted to get this preview in. Thanks to Dustin Nosler of Dodgers Digest for joining us. And if you want entertainment, follow Motor in all the games. That's all I can say.
Let's get it, Bubba. It's a big series, as you know. Big series.
Yeah, living vicariously through you. You can find Mo on Twitter at Boston_Mo. I'm Matt Bediantric, and the podcast is at Around Bases Pod. If you give us a rating and review on iTunes, we'd much appreciate it. With that being said, episode 86 in the books, previewing the World Series. Catch you guys next time.
See ya.